So what faith brings you here? What faith brings you to this holy place? The pathwork is a way of life. It's not therapy, it's a way of life, says the guide. And that's how we need to approach each other here. Because we need a safe place to do this work. To risk showing our dark side, to risk showing our best. It's hard work.
Love is not a commandment. Love is a spontaneous soul movement that happens naturally as a result of certain conditions of the personality, such as inner, correct understanding.
It's a very important statement. And then the guide says that love, in effect, the in effect is me. Love is a coincidental byproduct. So love happens. Then the guide goes on to say that love is acceptance. Like love happens when we accept life. When we accept that life is good and bad, difficult and easy. It's what we call, say, 50-50. When we have that consciousness, when we see ourselves in that consciousness, that we are good and bad. When we see ourselves as good and bad, when we see life as good and bad, then we see life on its terms. And we go with life, we move with life. Then love happens. Now, why doesn't that happen all the time? What stops the movement of love? Any thoughts? Fear. Right. Love stops when there's fear. Rather than just try to understand that with our heads, why don't you just stand up for a second, if you would? Just bend your knees a little, get into your bodies a little bit, bend and straighten your knees, breathe through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Stretch, yawn, whatever you want to do. Okay. Now, let's explore what hate feels like, experiencing hate. So, pretend that you hate me. Just shake your fist at me and hate me. Okay. Terrific. Pretend, right? Okay. Now, just bend your knees a little bit, bend and straighten them, keep your knees bent. Now pretend that you're afraid of me. Just look at me. Just open your eyes. Okay, now the fun part. Pretend you love me. Bert! Nice. Great. No, let's keep going. Okay, so you can sit down now. Now that was all just to help me. That's it. So what do you learn from this little experience about love, hate, and fear?
Well trained.
Yeah. Yeah.
The body expanding and contracting.
Say more, David.
Well,
I felt more connection with you, hating you and loving you, and when I was in fear, I completely disconnected and went into myself.
That's great. That's really the point I'm trying to make here. It's of course, many people, not necessarily in the pathwork, but see hate as the opposite of love, but it isn't. It's a distortion of love. But hate is a movement toward the other. And even if it's grossly distorted, it still leads to contact, disturbing contact, but contact. Whereas when we're in a state of fear, we withdraw, we pull away, we shrink, or David says contract. It's like that's the opposite of love. When we're removed from each other, it's impossible to love when we're in a state of fear, says the guide. When we're afraid, we have to know, like, where does fear come from? So fear clearly comes from misconception, one of the biggest words in the pathwork. So if we want to find out why we're afraid, we need to know what our wrong thinking is. And so we find our misconceptions. Now, when we look at misconceptions, all misconceptions are dualistic. They're black and white thinking. They contain opposites. Of course, we live on the earth plane, which is a realm of opposites. And some paths try to find unity by going directly for unity and skipping over duality. Not that that's good or bad, but the way of the pathwork is to accept duality, to accept life on its terms, to accept that there's night and day in this realm. That's reality. If you try to fight that, you get into trouble. So in the pathwork, we work on accepting duality, but we have to know what our own personal brand of duality is. So when we look at, say, the subject of love, it's like, love is great, right? It's wonderful. It's peaceful, secure, brings out our best. It's pleasurable. In effect, as with any dualistic misconception, if we go deep enough, if we're wise enough to go deep enough, we'll find that there's always a life or death situation, or at least that's how it feels, because life or death is the ultimate duality on our earth plane. So if we look at love on a conscious level, we'll see that love is life. Although that man in the back of the room may not agree with us consciously. Consciously, to some people, life may be very threatening. Life may be death.